each provide inputs on why they are doing what they are doing, the key environmental, decarbonization, and sustainability impacts of their work. At the end of both of the startups and the investors' insight on whys, the moderator takes a maximum of 3 minutes to wrap it up. So I now here on request all the panel members of energy storage to be seated.
I hope all your batteries have been recharged with good tea and coffee and a snack. But now we are going to talk about the real batteries. What is this? Okay. I want to ask one question before we start the session to the audience. And whoever gives the right answer to that question within 10 seconds will get an extra snack. In oil and coal and gas, the fossil fuels, right, which we use every day, the energy content of oil, coal, and gas, what is the origin of that energy content? Anybody? Where does the energy come from? The energy which is in coal, oil, and gas? The sun. Very good. You can go and get an extra snack. So basically what I would, all of us like to remember from today onwards, if you have not already done so, that coal, oil, and gas are not energy sources. They are just 3 batteries. But those 3 batteries, of course, are spread out all over the world. And the whole energy story, according to me, is about changing those 2 batteries, those 3 batteries, oil, coal, and gas. There will be better solar panels, there will be more energy efficient wind turbines that will keep on coming, but we need storage because the sun rises and then sets, and the wind blows and the wind sometimes doesn't blow. And if you speak to the grid operators, I have a few times visited the load dispatch center here in Chennai, and they're very much worried about the transition of energy because they see sudden drop in energy when the sun sets. They see wind energy fluctuating. Of course, now there is a pretty good forecasting system, but generally the concern of the load managers of the load dispatch centers is about the fluctuations, and their batteries have to play a role. Another role that energy storage plays is in peak shifting and peak shaving. Peak shaving means basically that, for example, if you have a peak between 6 and 9 in the evening, you try to shift that to hours when the sun shines. And there again, you do that with storage. You do it also with demand management. You can ask, for example, the consumers to run their washing machines not in the evening but during the day. That is one way you can do it. And that is also going to be addressed by time of the day tariffs. You make it more attractive to use electricity during the sun hours and less attractive during the night hours. But all the rest can only be solved with storing energy. And you may like to appreciate also that the same issue is there with water. Both energy and water come from the sky, right? We just have confirmed that the energy is from the sun. Water comes from rain. Groundwater is like fossil fuel. It's not a source of water, it is a storage of water only. And there we have the same problem. The rain falls in a very short period of time, in the monsoon. And that's why we see in all the villages, we used to see, and sometimes we still see them, the village pond, which is the place where the rainwater is collected during the monsoon and then utilized during the whole year. So water needs storage, and energy also needs storage. But today we are going to talk about energy, and we have an interesting panel of investors and manufacturers of batteries, and I'm going to ask them, each one of them, to speak first a few minutes on what they are doing, and then we will get into an interactive session. So we can just start from left to right as the people are seated. Please introduce yourself and just explain what you are doing.
Hello everyone. Hello. Great. So yeah, my name is Darshan and I represent a company called Nonam. We basically focus on enabling second life to lithium-ion batteries, that is end of life EV batteries having a transition into stationary storage application. Our core strength is in understanding aging of these batteries, understanding the risk associated with it, and then create economic value by reusing them into energy storage systems. And we believe we could contribute to decarbonizing the EV value chain or the battery value chain further, because battery itself also is a significant contributor in terms of carbon footprint. So we believe this could decarbonize further and also have an economic benefit to the EV consumer, because if we are deriving better economic value in the second phase of its journey, this could potentially impact the cost of the EV to some extent, and then also have some other secondary benefits. Our consumer, or the second life consumer, will get a battery pack which is, let's say, 30-40% cheaper than new lithium-ion battery, gives all the benefit of lithium-ion versus, let's say, alternative storage technologies for the given size, and at the same time be replacing the equivalent demand which otherwise would have been manufactured again for stationary storage applications. So on the whole, we believe this is a good mix of economic value to the ecosystem, both from mobility and energy, and as well as sustainable value. And lastly, if we all can, this definitely, in order to achieve this, let's say, closed loop circularity, various stakeholders of the ecosystem have to come together and work to reduce the costs on both sides. There is definitely more value which can be extracted, and if we can together look at battery as one horizontal component between mobility and storage, and take care of the battery well, I think it can serve us much longer than what we are today realizing, benefiting everyone in the ecosystem. And yeah, we are happy to collaborate with others to make this happen, both from business perspective and from sustainability standpoint. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, hi everyone. I am Prashant, co-founder of the energy company. So we come before these guys. We are trying to make batteries for mobility. So essentially what we are trying to do is creating full stack battery platform for vehicle manufacturers and stationary application. Our idea is that the convenience or practicality to own an EV comes from batteries. That's what we are here to optimize. We enable fast charging and fast discharging both through our tech. For example, we can provide a quick burst of 50 kilometers within 15 minutes at any public charger out there for a two-wheeler. Same thing can happen on a discharge setup. For example, there is a lift application, and someone wants to replace lead acid and on those applications, so we can support fast discharging also at that time. Obviously, fast charging comes with a trade-off in life. So we manage that through our own SaaS application. That's where the full stack bit comes in. So we essentially have digital twins of these batteries which form our SaaS platform. We can extend the life anywhere from 20 to 30% depending on time of the day, temperature of the day, or rider behavior, and essentially give you a better battery at the end of the life. So that's what we are here for. We are a smaller company, a 2-year-old company, and trying to collaborate with as many OEMs as possible, and obviously enable the entire circular economy bit by extending the battery life in the mobility space itself. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Suraj from Aether Energy. Going by the trend here, we build batteries for first time EV usage so that it can be used for a second time, right? But yeah, jokes aside, so at Aether we build smart electric two-wheelers, primarily because we feel it's a better vehicle rather than a better mode of transportation, right? Or rather than saying this is a green mode of transportation. Aether's been around for about 8 years now. We were incubated at IIT Madras initially, and now we are set up in Bangalore. Personally at Aether, I take care of battery engineering. As a part of my work, what I've been learning in the last year and a half is that the batteries as of today that are being used on electric two-wheelers are not very climate friendly, right? They're not very green energy. They have a very, very big carbon footprint, and we are working towards ensuring how to reduce that carbon footprint, right? So as a part of my work, I am trying to figure out a second life usage along with companies like this. I am trying to figure out how to increase the life of a battery as it is on a two-wheeler. What is the kind of chemistry we have to use on these batteries? I have a detailed slide I can take you guys through slightly later on, explaining the numbers behind what I'm talking about, so that there is more context. There's more context behind what I'm saying. But yeah, we'll go to the details later. As a brief introduction, I think. I can run through it now, or we can do it later on. Sure.
Hello everyone. With the trend, we are a passionate climate investor firm. I'm Aswani from Capital A. We are early stage VC fund investing up to 500K in early stage as a first check. To name few in the EV space, our investments are in battery simulation, like the ones what you have just described, so that we can increase the thermal runaway, then predict the range and also the cycles even before you go into production. So it's a combination of, or it's a hybrid of physical and as well as mathematical algorithm predictions or simulation. We are also a value chain investors. So after simulation, we have a battery swapping investments in a company called ChargeUp. We also invested in a motor drivetrain and BMS controlling or manufacturing company. Apart from the EV, we are also interested in renewable energy like solar concentration, even finance in solar projects, also into renewable and packaging. We also invested in a company which is into the best way to be sustainable is to reduce or don't even buy, right? I mean, so we invested in a company called Infinity Box, which basically when you order in Swiggy or Zomato, you don't recycle the boxes, but they take it back and reuse it. So that kind of passionate we are. Storage is a very interesting subject, so we can discuss more in it.
Hi, this is Rohan Choukkar. I represent the Bharat Innovation Fund. We are an early venture stage deep tech focused fund. So we do up to 2 or 3 million in a single check, similar amount of capital reserved for follow-ons. And in terms of closer, is it? Yeah. And in terms of what I mean by deep tech, we look at companies with very strongly differentiated innovation characteristics in terms of technology moat, in terms of quality of the solution being built out, in addition to other standard VC parameters. And as a fund house, we have our roots going back to the technology business incubation ecosystem at IIM Ahmedabad. So we work very closely with the IMA incubator. It's a sister organization where frequently if companies approach us which are interesting but a little too early, we kind of house them out of there, get them some seed funding, get them access to support infrastructure that IMA can provide, and once they're ready to be looked at from a Series A kind of perspective that the Bharat Fund looks at, we take a look at them from there. So bunch of investments that have happened mostly at the seed stage from our side relevant to energy storage. There's a couple of cell companies, cell level innovation around essentially cell design and packaging, around specific applications. So for example, a company which works on designing of batteries and battery cells specifically for very high power density applications like say drones. There's been a bunch of other investments in say the rest of the battery value chain along a couple of e-vehicle applications, etc. So that's a range of some of the stuff that we've looked at on the energy storage side itself. Thank you.
if you can open up that slide. Sure. So, okay, I'll wait for the slide to come up. But what I've tried to do is, I've tried to talk about how much of energy goes into making a cell, right? And in the lifetime of that cell, how much of energy gets used up, and as compared to a conventional vehicle, right, like an IC engine vehicle, how much is the energy you save over the life of the cell, and is it really worth looking at electric vehicles as a green substitute or not, right? So that's what this slide is. Do we have a pointer that I can use? You have a pointer? No? Okay. I can use the mouse, right? Okay. Just give me a minute. Right, okay. I'll just use the... Okay, this can't be a laser pointer, sorry. Okay, so if you see the table on the left side, it is basically a list of processes that are required to manufacture a lithium-ion cell, right? Think of this similar to your AA battery or a AAA battery. It is just one individual cell. This is not the battery pack, right? Several of these cells are put together to manufacture the battery pack. So this table is a list of all the processes needed. Just look at the number on the top right, right? 242 watt-hour, right? So this table is for a cell, or for a particular cell, which is NMC chemistry, which is just one type of cell. But just remember that the energy in this cell is 242 watt-hours, right? That is the amount of energy you get if you use this cell in any application. It can be a TV remote, it can be a vehicle, it can be anything, right? Now, to make this cell of 242 watt-hour, 13.3 kilowatt hours of energy is used, right, through all of these manufacturing processes. This is just energy used in the factory to manufacture that cell, right? And then on top of manufacturing the cell, you also need to build the battery pack out of it, right? A battery pack is a bunch of cells, right? Two-wheelers have hundreds to 200s of them. Three-wheelers have thousands of them. Cars have multiple thousands of them, right? So to manufacture a battery pack, you're going to spend more energy. You're going to add a BMS to it. You're going to add a thermal management system to it. So roughly that's about 50% of additional energy that goes into making a battery pack. All of this put together, you will roughly spend 83 watt-hours of energy to make 1 watt-hour of cell. Okay, just remember this number, 82:1, right? Now take a scenario where a certain cell is being used in an electric vehicle, right? The example I've taken is a 2170 cell, which is a certain diameter, certain height. It has 18 watt-hours of energy, right? Now in the life of this vehicle, the cell is going to be cycled 1000 times, right? It's roughly 200 times, 200 days a year is the active time, so 5 years, roughly 1000 numbers, right? This number is debatable, but for the sake of this math, let's just start off here. So you will use the cell 1000 times. Every cycle is 18 watt-hours. So you will use the cell for 18,000 watt-hours of energy, right? Now compare this compare the efficiency of an electric vehicle with the efficiency of a conventional vehicle, which is an IC engine, right? An IC engine roughly operates at 40% efficiency. An electric vehicle, battery, motor, controller put together is roughly 75% efficiency, right? So you're looking at a delta of 35% in efficiency. So if you're using 18,000 watt-hours of energy of this cell as an electric vehicle, you are saving 35% of it as compared to an IC engine in the lifetime of that vehicle, right? Now that number comes out to be 6,300 watt-hours for this example. Now to make or to save the 6,300 watt-hours, we have spent 1,500 watt-hours. 1,500 is basically the energy that is used to make that cell, right? You remember 80:1? So 80 watt-hour we spent to make 1 watt-hour. We have 18 watt-hours of the cell. So you spend 1,500 watt-hours to eventually save 6,000 watt-hours in the life of that cell, right? Now remember, in this math, we have only considered the energy used to make the cell, right? As compared to an IC engine, this cell is very, very complex to make. It involves a lot of materials which are spread across the globe, right? You have nickel somewhere in Argentina, you have cobalt in Chile, you have lithium in Australia. All of this has to move to one location so that it can be manufactured. Typically, these manufacturers are in China, Korea, Taiwan. And from China, Korea, Taiwan, it gets shipped to a manufacturer in India, like us, who builds the pack out of this. And to build the pack and to build the entire vehicle around it, you also spend energy. Right? I'm not accounting any of that energy into this. This is only the energy used to make that cell. Right? So 25% of what you saved has actually gone into manufacturing that cell initially. And if you want to recycle this cell, you will again spend the same amount of energy in just the process. Forget the logistics of the entire problem. Right? But the takeaway from here is that lithium-ion batteries, as it is today, is not a green energy solution. Right? It is only to be treated as a mode of transport. There has to be a lot of effort in terms of reducing the energy that goes into making a cell, as well as increasing the lifetime of these batteries than what it is today. Only then it can be looked at as an alternate or a mode of transport that has a lower carbon footprint than an IC engine. Right? That's the takeaway. A few numbers here for those of you who are looking at, should I recycle, should I reuse, should I work on degradation, should I refurbish, right? You can do your math basis these numbers.
Yeah, see, we, just like anyone in the industry, we are getting cells from outside. We don't make cells, obviously. Anything which happens outside the cell, the module, the pack, and then after that the BMS and then the analytics layer, that's what we take care of. Getting cells in India is obviously a challenge as of today, for everyone. That's because India is still not a very, very big market to outside countries, and unfortunately in India we do not really have homegrown players which have scaled up cell lines. Having said that, the tech is still new. Every 2 to 3 years at least, I've been in the space since 2014. There is a shift from right now from NMC to LFP, right? People are talking about that. But now if you look at LFP, then it is not a good thing for recycling because then you get iron out of it. So how does the entire thing shapes up related to the raw materials is still yet to be seen because the tech itself has not penetrated that deeper into the Indian market. So I will leave it there. It is still uncertain, but directions are being formed. It surely will happen in the near future. I mean, there are startups, for example, they were also talking about, right? There are startups in India, at least I can name 3-4 good startups who are working towards it, but it is a capital game, right? End of the day. Capital will come when there is enough demand. Now the demand is being generated, but whether it is that one particular cell which will win the race, that no one knows. Now,
I mean, if you just take India's evolution into cell battery, we are talking for last 5-6 years maybe. I don't think I heard a cell for mobility. My first company was Tesla maybe, first time, right? But if you take the same analogy or yardstick to China or to that of US, they were doing this maybe 25, 30 years back. So there is lot of time lapse between when you think about an idea, when you ideate, research, lab stage, and then pre-production and then production. India is still a consumer market yet, so we will use all the stuff coming from everywhere and see what is better, and then maybe go into a manufacturing hub. And India is also not a manufacturing hub in this space, because the core raw materials, at least, which are used to build a cell, are not from our homegrown or not available in India. So if it is like Taiwan or any other place where it is going to be just building it, then it will take time for local consumption to happen and then export to happen. So there is amount of time to get to that maturity, and then capital will follow with maturity.
So it is not directly that technology is evolving so fast, so we don't want to invest in it. I think at Aether itself, I've been part of several conversations where we have debated, should we make our own cells or not, right? And we decided not to make our own cells, primarily because of two things, right? One is, to manufacture a cell, there are two inputs. One input is the technology, which is, in other words, the recipe or the chemistry needed to make the cell, right? Think of it as a recipe for a dish that you're making. The second is the process, right? And the process is also very, very complex. The process involves like a coating, or the slide I showed you, right? There are 15, 20 steps in that process. You need to coat it, you need to dry it. The amount of tolerance or the amount of accuracy involved in that is in the order of microns, right? And a lot of things can go wrong. And we need to have equipment as well as inspection parameters in place to be able to control it to such a high level of standard. And the other problem with it is, if there's an issue in your cell, you don't know it on day one. You will know it a year or a couple of years after that, right? Which means if I manufacture a cell, I give it to an OEM, the OEM installs it in the vehicle's out in the field, and only then I know that, hey, there is something wrong with this cell, right? So that is the bigger challenge with manufacturing in India as of now, right? Something as simple as the graphite that is used, that goes inside the cell. Graphite is very common in India, right? Like there are 4 or 5 graphite companies in India, but none of them are able to make graphite of the purity and scale that can be used in cells, right? This graphite powder needs to be a certain micron in size, and the size we are dealing with today is much bigger than that, right? So there are about 3 or 4 companies today that are venturing into manufacturing of cells, but they are also looking at importing the technology from outside, stabilizing it initially in India, and then looking at reverse integration of the entire supply chain locally itself, right? So the manufacturer first needs to have the line in place, and then his sub-vendors need to have the lines in place for the electrolyte, the cathode active material, anode active material, the cans that go into it, the copper, aluminum reels. So it is a fairly complex supply chain problem. I feel the government is doing its bit in terms of announcing subsidies and regulations around this. But it's not in the hands of one person or one company or one investor to actually drive this. I feel as an ecosystem, we should all work together to make this happen. So
I think two very interesting or two very important points raised, and largely as an ecosystem, I think we all have to understand. Is one, variability of the material which goes into the cell on a batch wise, even batch of today versus tomorrow. Second is the impact of variability is not seen in first 365 days, or first 500 days, etc. So there is a translation of that risk onto the user or the entire value chain. The point here is, how do we de-risk ourselves with this? And my submission is, second life or assessment, continuous assessment of the battery, trying to see at which point there is an inflection of life versus revenue in mobility and transfer it to ESS. And if this elasticity can be well understood in terms of when is the right point to shift and de-risk the entire value chain with respect to this variability, and these variabilities cannot be vanished. The variation in material and the processing ability cannot be vanished. So only by employing alternative mechanisms we can de-risk the value chain. And this is affecting everyone, right? The fear for financial fear from the OEM is for this very reason, that things can go wrong and nobody, at least in their own decision making capability and required siloed decision making capability, they are not able to assess the risk.
So, yeah. Just to very important points made by both the gentlemen who spoke just before me. So it sums up the essence of why. Sorry, yeah. So for the points, very important points raised by both the gentlemen who've spoken before me, and it sums up why capital is relatively scarce in this sector, right? For any business problem or engineering problem to scale up, you need the nature of this engineering problem that you're solving, how you're solving it, to line up with the characteristics of the capital that is available, right? What is your horizon to invest in? Do you have people to answer to whom you have to return money at the end of a certain cycle, right? So on and so forth. So the stage at which we are at as an entire industry within India is at this funny stage where a lot of conventional instruments, could be debt, could be venture capital, could be a bunch of others who don't by themselves fit in with this problem perfectly. You're talking about a long gestation period. If it's a long gestation period for someone like me, after say year 6 or 7, all of my investors sit on my head like, when is my money coming back? Right? So there's no good answer to this conundrum. The risk along the entire development life cycle, the engineering risks that exist are non-trivial. How do you have appropriately stage-gated financial support that solves particular levels of challenges at, say, a benchtop level, a small pilot line level, up to a large factory level, right? That level of bifurcation, that level of breaking it down and giving investors itself a clear view of, I can come in here, ideally I can try and get out at this stage, there are options available for me, and I'm not stuck with an investment that I don't know what to do with. So that sums up the challenge of capital being hesitant to enter this sector.
So I think this reminds me all of us from a much better idea about the challenges both on the technical side and also on the investment side. About 2 years ago, I was invited by Power Grid Corporation of India to one of their substations where they were experimenting with big batteries, container, whole container. And one they were using for frequency support, and the other one they were using for peak shaving. If I remember well, both had a different technology. Now, what is the view of the panel on grid support with batteries? You are mainly on the mobility side, but where are we with regard to battery systems, energy storage systems, reliable, that can support the renewable energy transition, and in other words, can support the grid so that the energy transition can happen at an appropriate speed? Any views on grid support with batteries? And there's the technology, and you are going to do it, and what are the investments required for that? Any thoughts?
I don't want to go very technical in that, but two fundamental things, at least I believe, is that we should reduce the amount of energy transmission happening. The minute you reduce the amount of energy transmitting from one place to other, then you will bring efficiencies and you will have the more control. That is one thing. Second, with the simple concept of energy can neither be created nor lost. Whenever there is an energy conversion happening, if you also build good storage systems, then we'll be in a better place. So we are talking about energy storage now again, but energy storage was an issue even 40-50 years back. I mean, the entire step up, step down, and all these transmissions happening is because of lack of energy storage, right? Now that the energy is becoming expensive and not also available everywhere, we are more focusing on storage. So battery is one solution. We also invested in a company called Tan90, which is into phase change material. Again, solid state storage of energy is also a good solution. So, I mean, these are the two, but I'm sure there are multiple storage solutions coming out now. Ideally, it should have come maybe 100 years back when electricity was invented, whether it is hydroelectricity or thermal electricity. Storage should have been researched back to back at that time.
I mean, slightly going back to your first question, state in India as such, right? So from grid ancillary services, if you see the most of the activities today have been largely PPA agreement based installations. Grid, the cost metrics are very different, and it's still evolving in Indian context, both from the demand for that quality of power and at the same time managing it. The need or the intent to manage it, both are evolving. From I guess if you start considering that technology is largely available, it's, if you see from cost perspective, it's quite a tricky topic there. And if you just map it to the consumption of battery from the mobility sector, which could be used here, if you look at the rate at which Tata today is producing, it's about, it's a few thousand cars a month, and they want to double it in the near future, which means roughly about 12 to 14 months, they are going to bring on about $1 billion worth batteries into the field, which if it is, let's say, coordinated into a commercial use case, will come out of the field in about 3 to 4 years. So that is few gigawatt hour, obviously, and this can straight away go into such applications. We just have to pre-plan some of it. And obviously, because these are intermittent loads in grid ancillary services, these batteries can perform very well. We don't need to invest on brand new assets.
There also is a policy issue. In fact, we have had discussions with the CEA in Delhi that we need not only a time of the day consumption tariff, we need also a time of the day feed-in tariff. So if I feed in power into the grid between 6 and 10 in the evening, I should get a higher feed-in tariff, right? And I feed it in from my battery. That doesn't matter from where I feed it in. So we need TOD, time of the day tariffs, not only for consumption, but also for export. You had a point to make?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a problem statement like grid storage, given the scale at which you're talking of operating, a lot more technology categories become viable, which would not be for smaller applications like, say, automotive, mobility, etc. You know, as an investor, I would love to see, if you're talking about grid storage, a lot of thermal approaches, thermochemical approaches starting to come in, rather than, you know, just restricting ourselves to electrochemical batteries, etc. You know, so molten salt,
and that point,
other approaches becomes very interesting.
Yeah, and the point that you raised about transmission should be reduced. So that is very much possible with solar, because in solar you can have distributed generation, and you can also have distributed storage. You could even have storage at distribution transformer level or at substation level, right? So with distributed generation, which is very much possible with solar, we can reduce the transmission and distribution losses very much. And then the storage can happen locally, and whatever storage is not required locally will automatically flow back to the overall grid.
Absolutely.
You wanted to make a point?
Yeah, just double clicking on the tariff point that you made, right? If you look at the stat, India, I mean, per capita power consumption is on a lower side. We don't consume a lot of power on a per capita basis, and hence the tariff dynamic pricing is not huge at present. I think in commercial it is the highest. It goes anywhere from, if I'm not wrong, 8 to 15 rupees-ish, something like that. So the battery needs to be in that zone. Now, if you have to cover that tariff bit, then the battery pricing cannot be higher than a particular number. Otherwise, no one will invest in that, right? So, but the gap cannot increase further because it is not an equal spread, because the retail consumers gap is not huge because the per capita is again down. So it's a cycle on its own. But on the commercial space, the sector is still moving because there are huge penalties because of that. So that's where I feel that commercial will obviously be the first one to pick up energy storage as a backup. But the long-term objective should also come from second life batteries, because that is where the ROI will make sense. It will not make sense on the first life batteries.
So you both have to make sure that you make very good batteries so that he can give a second life to them. And both of you have to finance this. So I have just been told that we have to close the session. So I want to thank everybody sitting here in the panel, because I don't know how you feel, but I definitely have learned a lot about what are the real challenges that they are facing in terms of raw materials, in terms of manufacturing, and why we don't have yet the production of cells in the country is also become very clear. And I think we have to congratulate them of having taken the leap into battery manufacturing in spite of all these challenges. And we have to thank the funders also for having put money into this. So thanks a lot, everybody, and thank you for the session.